Our next presenter just arrived late last night from Canada. I'm so grateful that she made the journey. She's an associate professor of environmental and resource studies at Trent University, where she teaches and does research on the biological effects of environmental contaminants. She received her PhD from the University of Toronto, completed postdoctoral research at Cornell, and taught at the University of Toronto before going to Trent University in Peterborough, Canada. Her research since the 1990s is concerned with the biological effects of electromagnetic pollution, including radio frequency radiation, electromagnetic fields, dirty electricity, and ground current. She works with diabetics as well as with individuals who have multiple sclerosis, tinnitus, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and those who are electrically hypersensitive. She also conducts research on sick building syndrome as it relates to power quality in schools. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Magda Havas.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I can't believe how beautiful the grounds are. I came from Canada with a friend of mine. We drove down. Her name is Sheena Symington, and she's sitting in the front row and will be helping me. And she asked, well, how formal is this place? And I said, oh, it's just a farm. But it's an absolutely beautiful farm. I'd like to start my talks by saying, could you please turn your cell phones off? And I'm not asking you to put it on vibration mode, because then it's still transmitting. And I suspect there are at least some people in this audience who are electrically sensitive. So the best way to do it is actually to put it on airplane mode and make sure that your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth are both off when you're in a group of people, because of their sensitivities. The title of my talk is Electromagnetic Fields and the Dangers that we're experiencing in the modern world. I work primarily with people, but I've also done plant studies and animal studies. And the key effects of electromagnetic pollution are three things. One is they cause cancers, and they cause cancers. They affect reproduction. We have a lot of evidence for sperm, for example, much less for the egg cell. And they cause symptoms of electrohypersensitivity. I'm going to limit most of my talk to electrohypersensitivity, but I will mention the other two as well in passing. Also, it's more than just humans that are affected. We've done studies. This is a paper that's coming out that has just recently been released. And it's showing pea plants here that have been exposed to Wi-Fi radiation for 30 days, and these are the control pea plants. So you can see here that plants are also adversely affected by this radiation. And this isn't psychosomatic, which we're led to believe it is with humans. I also work on ground current, and because we had it on a farm, I thought I'd just mention this briefly. This is a farm that has a ground current problem, and you can see the swollen hocks on this animal, and you can see these open sores that they have that simply won't heal. Antibiotics don't do any good, and milk production goes down. It's not only the cows that are affected, the farmers are also affected. And finally, we've also done some research with bees, and it's affecting the bee behavior, bee activity. So it's more than just pesticides that are affecting bees. It's also, to a certain degree, electromagnetic radiation. Now, I'm preaching to the choir when I say this. Our health really depends on the environment. And many people here, if not everyone, knows how important it is to eat clean, healthy, locally grown organic food that's not contaminated with genetically modified organisms. And in addition to the clean food, having good clean water, living water to drink, and breathing clean air. I think this is all absolutely vital to our health, and that's not new information to anyone sitting in this room. What seems to be fairly new information is that some of the types of contaminants that we're dealing with, people are simply not as aware of as they should be. Certainly living next to a dump or being exposed to chemical contaminants in our environment is a real problem. Having mold in a building we know is unhealthy, and being exposed to things like radon gas coming from natural sources from a basement. But the types that they're not as familiar with are electromagnetic pollution, that I just call electrosmog, to keep it short. We have houses that are built near power lines, high voltage transmission lines. We put cell phone antennas very close to buildings, and we certainly put cell phone antennas on top of buildings as well. Very often the people who live immediately underneath these antennas or who live facing those antennas become ill quite quickly within a matter of weeks to a matter of months. Now, some of you have probably heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a cell biologist. He's written a number of really remarkable books that are certainly worth reading. And when he was a young student studying cell biology, he worked with stem cells. And we now know that stem cells are primitive cells that can actually form into other types of tissue. They can differentiate, and the way they differentiate depends very much on the culture that you put them in or on their environment. So he would take one stem cell, replicate it so it's genetically identical, put it onto 3 different agar plates with different nutrients in them. One would become muscle, another would become bone, and a third would become fat cells. So one of the things he realized from this is that the environment shapes our behavior and to a certain degree influences our genetics. He said that one of the most important lessons he learned from his professor was that if you're having problems with your cell culture, so you're having difficulty culturing your cells, they're not growing as they should, don't examine the culture, examine the environment. How many of our doctors examine the environment when their patients are having health problems? All they really do is look at the symptoms and then try to alleviate the symptoms. They very seldom try to determine what the cause of the illness is. So if we examine our electrosmog environment, we realize that the electromagnetic pollution we're exposed to has 3 different routes. It comes through the air. A lot of the wireless technology we have, for example, falls into this category. It flows along wires, and we can measure it, and it flows along the ground. And so that picture I showed you in the very first slide of the cow that had the swollen hocks, that was exposed to ground currents. So that cow had electricity flowing through its body on a regular basis to the point that its immune system was no longer functioning, and eventually these animals can't stand up anymore and they die. Now, if we could see electrosmog, this is probably what it would look like. It would look like a real pea souper from London or from the Los Angeles area. We're putting Wi-Fi into schools, and so we're surrounding our students with electromagnetic pollution. And the previous speaker was talking about autism and asthma and all sorts of other problems, and we know that with some children, this electromagnetic exposure is making their symptoms worse, whatever their symptoms may be. And there are parents and teachers trying to remove Wi-Fi from schools. Very few of these groups that are trying to remove Wi-Fi are successful, but some finally are becoming successful. Now, this is a student from a school in Ontario where they installed Wi-Fi, and then a number of the students started to become ill. And it wasn't until the teachers and parents started to talk amongst each other about what some of the health issues were, because there was a lot of similarities between these health issues. And this is just a short clip of 2 students who became ill at the school after the Wi-Fi was installed.
Austin Lamont, and I'm 14 years old. I go to Mountain View School. I've been suffering weird headaches and dizziness and displacement. Like, it feels like my head is like there's a lot of pressure in my head, and it's like repulsing like this. And I just feel like displaced, and then when I'm not there, nothing happens. So, and like, I get really like weak, and like it's hard to hold a pencil too, and I can't think straight.
Starting this year at Mountain View, I've been getting a lot of headaches, and it's been making me really dizzy, and like it feels like I can't concentrate, and you feel like you're not really there. It's hard to explain.
The thing that concerned us was that she always got better when she got home, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. We got her eyes checked and found out that wasn't it, and actually had everything checked and found out that wasn't it. And she's still, to this day, when she goes to class, probably about 4 out of the 5 days that she's there, she's coming home with a headache. And I mean significant headache where she has to take Tylenol or Advil.
Now, I know when I was in school, I seldom got a headache as a student, and certainly I'm not familiar with other, my friends becoming ill. But there's something worse than headaches that's being detected in these schools. Some of the kids are going to classes and their heart starts beating really, really quickly. It starts palpitating. They get really, really concerned about this. One little boy said he thought he was having a heart attack. His parents took him to a pediatric cardiologist to find out what was wrong, and they couldn't find anything. We've done some research with adults, and one of the things we find is that some people who are electrically hypersensitive develop what would be classified as an anxiety attack, where their heart just starts pounding, they don't know what's going on, they remove themselves from that environment, and they go back to normal. So this is really quite serious. If you have a child in that situation and then they're exposed to exercise as well, their hearts can't take it, and we've had some sudden cardiac arrests very close to this particular school board that are abnormally high for Canada. In a very short period of time after Wi-Fi was introduced. I'm not suggesting this is due entirely to Wi-Fi, but I think Wi-Fi is a culprit in this. And it's become so bad with some of the students being resuscitated, a few of them actually dying, that the schools have installed defibrillators. So we've asked them to remove Wi-Fi or to simply turn it off for a month to see if those symptoms abate, and they've refused to do so. So this is a really very serious problem that affects kids in school, and it's really up to us to protect these kids because there's no one else who's going to be able to do that. If we look at electrosmog in our home environment, it comes from a number of sources. One actually is microwave ovens. I don't know how many of you use microwaves because probably that's not a good thing for you to do anyway. But in the event you do, if you stand right in front of that microwave oven, chances are you're being exposed to microwave radiation. Every oven I've tested, apart from one, leaks microwaves. And you can pick up the radiation, 10, 15, 20 yards away. So it's not as though it's trivial. Standing in front of a microwave oven watching your food go around is probably the worst thing you can do because your eyes are very, very sensitive to this radiation, and the consequences are cataracts. So the more microwaves you're exposed to, the more likely you are to develop cataracts eventually. I think perhaps one of the most disgusting things that we're doing is we're exposing kids. We're using wireless baby monitors, and what parents don't know, in their attempt to protect their children, they use these monitors, put them very close to the crib, and they're irradiating their children with microwave radiation. And the levels are not insignificant, they're really quite high. That wireless baby monitor is same as your cordless phone that you may have in your house. The base station here that you see from the parent phone, that is radiating 24/7 whether you're using the phone or not. So having a cell phone as your primary phone is probably better than having a cordless phone in your house because of the high levels of radiation that you get from these devices. And in a few minutes, we're actually going to show you how far that radiation goes. We have a little demonstration for you. If you have Wi-Fi in your home, I think one of the things that it's very, very important for people to realize is you don't have to give up your connection to the internet. As long as you use an Ethernet connection or some sort of wired connection, you have several choices that we can talk about later. You don't have to be exposed to those microwaves. Most people, if they do have Wi-Fi in the home, they leave it on all the time, so they're irradiating themselves in the middle of the night while they're sleeping. And for those of you who have difficulty sleeping, as do I, that could be one of the culprits that would make sleep more difficult. And once again, children are exposed at a very, very early age. They have wireless games that they use, Wii games, and they're on them for hours at a time, and this is just irradiating their entire little bodies, and most parents don't know about it. Now, you can use a lot of these games in a wired mode, and if anyone's interested, Sheena has experience with this as she's weaned all of her kids off wireless technology, and she can share that information with you. If you could hear this radiation, it has a certain frequency, and you can pick it up with meters that convert the electromagnetic energy into sound. One of the things we're told about smart meters, and this is a smart meter on the side of a house in Ontario, one of the things we're told about smart meters is they irradiate for a few seconds a day. So you really have nothing to worry about. And so some of us went out, and this is a friend of mine, Martin Weatherall, he went out and he started measuring some of these smart meters because people were complaining that they became sick shortly after the smart meters were installed in their home. And this is what he found. So these aren't irradiating just a few seconds each day. It turns out that some smart meters are connected in kind of a hub or a mesh, and they're communicating with each other. And so if you happen to be at the end of the pipe of one of your, in your neighborhood, then all of the other smart meters could be communicating with yours as they are in this particular case. And so they're on almost all the time, 24/7. And if you take a good look at this particular slide, you can see the smart meter here, and there was a shrub against the wall, and I think you can see quite clearly that the leaves are in pretty bad shape. This is just a few months after the smart meter was installed. A year later, the entire shrub was dead. So when we talk about this having no biological effects, that information is absolutely false. The radiation actually goes to the transmitter, so it can go hundreds of yards away, depending on how far away the connecting transmitter is to get it to the utility. So they're really quite powerful, and they go quite a distance. There are ways to shield them, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, one of the things I have here is a friend of mine was very kind. He made a little PDF file. It's just a one-page file that you can see here. And he took the various devices that we have that emit microwave radiation. They all emit at different frequencies, and he designed something for me that I make available to anyone. It's on my website. And it will tell you it will let you hear the different frequencies these devices make. So here's the Wi-Fi router. Here's a cordless phone. Cell phone. Some of you might have heard that when you're using your cell phone. Bluetooth. Baby monitor, and the mother's monitor. So usually, a mother might keep it on her hip, so she's actually irradiating her ovaries while she's doing that. Now, most people will have some of these devices in their home, and this is what they would be exposed to. Okay. I usually leave that on quite a long time until people are so irritated. If you could hear this, you would not expose yourself to this radiation. But because you can't hear it and you can't sense it, most people can't sense it. I have people I work with who are electrically sensitive who can tell me what the make of the cordless phone is as they walk by a house, because they get a headache at different parts of their head, so they can actually differentiate between that. I'm going to ask Sheena to come up while I have this slide on. And one of the things we'd like to demonstrate is just how far this radiation actually goes. And so we have, no. So we have, this is just the base of a cordless phone. Now, this microphone also emits, so I'm going to put it down, and I hope people can still hear what I'm saying. but that baby monitor will transmit to several houses away from you. So you can just imagine how strong it is. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Now, why is Wi-Fi an issue now? Why are we so concerned about it now? And one of the reasons is our exposure is increasing exponentially. This is a map of the United States showing Wi-Fi hotspots in 2002, and most of these were at universities and in research labs. So Wi-Fi was not a common element in our society. A couple of years later, so within 10 years, we've moved from virtually no coverage to blanketed coverage. We now have it in coffee shops, schools, our homes, on airplanes. We have it virtually everywhere, and it's getting worse. We're not nearly at the apex of our exposure. And it turns out there are more mobile phones in the United States than there's people. Okay, a little bit interesting. And we're not even close to what our exposure is going to be, and I'll share some of that as well. When I was a child, I spent most of my time outdoors. Sheena and I, as we were driving down, we were talking about, well, our parents had to call us in when it was dark because we'd still be outside playing ball or whatever, even though we couldn't see. So we were out in a natural environment. This is what's common today for our kids. So they're becoming very sedentary, which is a health issue. There's problems with social interactions. Most kids would like to just text their friends rather than actually talk with them. There's a nature deficiency. We're just not getting into the outdoors. And they're exposed to microwave radiation when they're using all of these different devices. And that can't be healthy. I mentioned that we're only partway to the top of our electrosmog exposure, and I say that with some confidence because last year the Federal Communication, they sell the spectrum to the wireless producers so that they can use different frequencies in different communities. So if you're on TELUS or AT&T or whatever your provider is, they purchase that frequency in the different communities, and they purchase it for quite a lot of money. So last year, the Federal Communication Commission that regulates this industry made $45 billion. There is no way they're going to tell the industry your radiation is unsafe, it's unhealthy, and we're going to have to restrict it. So our exposure is going to go up, and manufacturers are trying to find ways that they can actually use the technology. This is one example. There are diapers now available that you can buy that have a little chip in the bottom, and when it gets wet, it tells the mother's cell phone that the diaper is wet and needs changing. They're soothers that measure temperature. They have a little radio transmitter inside, and so you have a child who has a fever, and you put that radio transmitter inside the infant's mouth, and you can monitor their temperature, while you're doing something else. This is absolutely frivolous technology. The fact that it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. And it reminds me of what happened with X-rays, and I see some of you in the audience may remember this. When X-rays were first discovered, and they were used, one of the ways they were used was in shoe stores, where kids have a hard time telling whether a shoe is too tight or too loose or whatever. And so you can see here, the child would stand up on this, they'd put their feet into this hollow area, and the clerk at the shoe store and the mother would peer in and find out where the toes were relative to the shoe. Okay, someone has their cell phone on. Okay, Sheena, do you want to go around and just point it at everyone? Okay, this is an absolutely frivolous use of the technology, and fortunately we recognized that X-rays were harmful fairly early on, and we limited their use. Some of the technology is poorly designed. The wireless baby monitors that we have in North America, they irradiate all the time. So as soon as you have them plugged in, just with that, like with that cordless phone we showed a minute ago, they are bouncing off the radiation off the wall, going to your neighbors, everything else. In Europe, you can actually buy the same baby monitor, but it's voice activated, which means there's absolutely no radiation until the infant cries. Then a message is sent to the other device, the mother's monitor, and the mother can respond. We tried to import these monitors to North America thinking, it's really important that you know noises, sounds coming from your infant's bedroom, and we couldn't do that. They said they can't ship to North America. And when we looked into it a little bit more carefully, they said the Federal Communication Commission has banned them. So you can't have baby monitors that radiate only when needed. You have to have baby monitors that radiate 24/7. And when we tried to ask, well, why would the Federal Communication ban baby monitors that are more energy efficient and emit less microwave radiation, what we were told is that they interfere with military communication. Yeah, so that's not true. We have a really serious emerging health crisis, and I would actually say it's emerged. It's no longer emerging. Most of the people that I interact with are chronically ill. They have chronic depression, chronic pain, they have difficulty sleeping, they have anxiety disorders, they can't remember things. So this is a real comment on the health of our society. We're becoming chronically ill, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Electromagnetic pollution has been linked to every single one of these illnesses that I've noted here. And if anything, this is part of the electro-hypersensitivity syndrome that we're talking about. And I have a little questionnaire here for you that you can sort of add up on your fingers and toes, is whether you're not at risk of becoming electrically hypersensitive. So you can just keep a tab as we go through this. Do you have any of these symptoms? You'll notice that asthma is there as well. We did some research in a school where they had sick building syndrome. Quite a few of the kids had asthma. They went in and cleaned up the mold and cleaned up the chemicals. There was absolutely no difference in the response of the kids. The migraines were still high. Teachers were sick. They cleaned up the dirty electricity in the school. And of the 37 students who used inhalers on a daily basis for their asthma, that dropped to 3. And only for exercise-induced asthma. So we know this, can actually affect asthma. The items on the left are all things that happen as we age. And so when I talk to people who have this chronic illness, they tell me, well, I'm just getting older. This is normal for older people not to be able to sleep, not to need a lot of sleep, to wake up with aches and pains. This is all really quite natural. And the truth is, it isn't natural, that if these individuals go into a clean environment and they stay there for a few days, very often they'll have a good night's sleep. They'll wake up with many fewer aches and pains. They won't have the dizziness. Their heart won't be, speeding out of their chest or having an irregular heart rate. So there is something called real aging, and then there's something called rapid aging syndrome. And electrohypersensitivity is a form of rapid aging syndrome. Now, here's the questionnaire, so you can start adding things up on fingers and toes. Do you use a cell phone? Do you keep it on your body, as you can see here? It turns out that a cell phone can reach about 36 miles when it's communicating with a cell tower. So it's really quite powerful. Did you start using it before the age of 20? If you did, your incidence of brain tumors goes up 5-fold. Have you used it for more than 10 years? Many of the studies that are looking at different types of tumors associated with the head are finding that those tumors are showing up after 10 years of moderate to heavy exposure. Do you use a cordless phone before the age of 20? Have you used it for more than 10 years? Is it in your bedroom? Do you use compact fluorescent light bulbs? I know the government outlawed the incandescent light bulbs because they weren't energy efficient, and they forced people to use these compact fluorescent light bulbs. They contain mercury, which is a carcinogen, so if you break one of these bulbs, you have to clean it up in a very special way that EPA has on their website. They emit ultraviolet radiation, so you shouldn't be sitting close to them for anything more than an hour. They produce something called dirty electricity that we can demonstrate if anyone's interested. They produce radio frequency radiation, and they're making people sick. In the United Kingdom, the Epilepsy Association, the Migraine Association have come out against these light bulbs because they're making people ill. And this is just one example of what it can do to the skin. Do you have a clock radio near your bed? Within arm's reach of your bed? Do you use a computer for hours each day? Well, even though clock radio doesn't emit a lot of electromagnetic energy, the fact that you're exposed to it for 6 to 8 hours or 10 hours a day increases your overall exposure. And one of the things we're learning, it's chronic exposure. It's the exposure, the little bit that you get every single day, it begins to add up and affect your body. Do you have a Wi-Fi router at home or at work or for your kids at school? Do you leave it on all the time? At the very least, you should turn it off at nighttime. Do you use a Bluetooth, or do you have an iPad that you use, go on to the internet with in a wireless fashion? Do you have wireless hearing aids? One of the things we learned about wireless hearing aids is some hearing aids, the two, if you have one in each ear, they talk to each other. And guess what? That radiation goes right through your head. People who started using them have started developing headaches. You turn off the wireless function and their headaches go away. So very often you're exposed to this radiation without even knowing you're exposed. Do you have a wireless baby monitor in your home? Do you have a wireless smart meter on your home? Do you have smart appliances? Most people don't know if they have smart appliances. A friend of mine purchased, who's electrically sensitive, he purchased a freezer, and he started getting really ill. And he had all the meters to measure what he was exposed to, and he started going around the house. He said, wow, you know, my symptoms are suddenly worse at home, and he had a clean home. And he went to the garage where he kept the freezer, and lo and behold, it was blasting out microwave radiation. So he contacted the company and asked if he could disable the chip on it, and they said no, because it would void the warranty. So, yeah. So he spent quite a few weeks after that trying to find an old-fashioned freezer that didn't have the smart appliance associated with it. Your smart appliances are going to talk to your smart meter, and so your level of exposure is simply going to go up even more. Do you live near a high voltage transmission line? We're thinking about 100 yards is the critical distance. Do you live in a multi-unit dwelling where you're very close to neighbors? If one of those neighbors has any of the devices I've mentioned, the Wi-Fi router, the baby monitor, or the cordless phone, it's going to reach about 100 meters from that position. If you're living on the upper floors of these buildings, chances are your exposures are going to be higher because of the way antennas are situated in large cities. Are you within 400 meters of a cell phone antenna? Are you within 2 to 4 kilometers of broadcast antennas? And are you near an airport or a radar station where you're exposed to radar, obviously? Pardon? Ideally, if it's line of sight, if you can actually see it from a window in your home, you'd be exposed to some of that, but about 2 to 4 kilometers seems to be a critical distance. People who are very electrically sensitive can't be even that close. But most of the studies that are looking at cancers and people who become ill in their homes, it seems to be, the critical distance seems to be between 2 to 4 kilometers. So, how many of you answered more than 15? Anyone brave enough to raise their hand? Okay. 10 to 15? Okay. 5 to 10. Greater than, less than 5? Okay, that's really great. You know, even in this environment where I know all of you are really aware of how to stay healthy, some of this is just new information that you weren't aware of, that you were exposed to. And some of it we can't control. The really good news is that most of our exposure we can control. So the exposure that we have in our home, that's often to a certain degree within our control, and so that can empower us. How many people are likely to suffer from electrical hypersensitivity? Well, there was a study that was done in 2006 in various countries, and it was plotted. And you can see here that the levels are increasing. Now, this is self-diagnosed electrical hypersensitivity. And I've interacted with people who think they're electrically sensitive, and we can't find any evidence for that. We've also interacted with people who know they're not electrically sensitive, and yet they respond in a negative way. So I don't know how accurate this information is. But one of the claims that this particular study made is that by 2017, so by next year, 50% of the population is going to have the symptoms of electrical hypersensitivity. I use a fairly conservative number. I think about 3%, and it could be as low as 1, and it could be as high as 5. 3% of the population have severe symptoms of electrohypersensitivity to the point where they really can't function in a world that has this radiation. I think another 35% have mild to moderate symptoms, where they come home from work, they have a headache, they're tired, they need a nap, they can't think all that clearly, but they can still function. If we use these two statistics, 3 and 35%, in Canada, we have 1 million people who are suffering from severe electrohypersensitivity. Your population is about 10 times the size of Canada. So we've got a huge population in the United States that is likely to be sensitive. And I did it for Vermont as well. There's probably just under 20,000 people who might have severe electrohypersensitivity. And that number might actually be slightly less, because this is very much a, more of a rural, small community kind of atmosphere here. But you might have as many as 200,000 people with mild to moderate sensitivity. Who is at greatest risk? Well, anyone who's had physical trauma to the nervous system. So if you've been in a car accident with whiplash, chances are you're going to be more sensitive than someone who hasn't, because we know it affects the nervous system. Electrical trauma, any kind of chemical trauma, particularly pesticides, some of the contaminants that we're putting into food, and mercury seems to be a really big one. So if you have mercury amalgam fillings, if you eat a lot of, large fish like tuna, chances are you're going to be more likely to be sensitive. If you've had biological trauma and you're actually fighting certain types of organisms in your body, you're overloaded with yeast, or you have Lyme. If you have an impaired immune system, and if you happen to fall into a sensitive group, like someone who's predisposed to cancer or is very young and doesn't have a well-developed immune system. Now, if we lived in a home that had mold, and if we became sick, what would everyone do? Move or get rid of the mold, right? So you get rid of the mold. However, when it comes to electromagnetic pollution, because they don't even know it's the electromagnetic pollution that does it. But if you did know, if you could make that connection, then what you do is you get rid of it and you use things that are wired. So it doesn't mean we can't use any kind of technology, it just means we have to use it in a wiser fashion. Now, it's really important to create a sanctuary in your home. Your bedroom is probably the most important environment to keep clean. If the radiation coming into your bedroom is coming from outside, there are now all sorts of products available for you to block or shield the radiation. You can see this beautiful canopy around this bed. And you can see under here, that is actually a canopy as well that covers the bottom of the bed. This material is a cotton that's wound around silver fiber, so you can imagine how expensive it is. But the silver fiber forms a Faraday cage around your bed so that when you're in that environment, you are not exposed to any kind of radio frequency or microwave radiation. So this is one way to shield yourself if the levels are coming from outside of your home and you can't control them. Any kind of metal mesh will do this as well, so you don't have to go to this expense. It could be copper, it could be aluminum, it could be anything. There's now paint available and wallpaper. The paint has carbon particles in it that will absorb some of the microwave radiation and shield some of the microwave radiation as well. And so people either paint their walls, which is not a good thing to do, because if you move and someone moves into your home and they have all of these gadgets and they're using a microwave oven in that room, it's going to bounce off the wall and increase their exposure. So you don't really want to paint the walls, but you might paint wallpaper because it can be then ripped off for someone who doesn't want that. There's film you can put on your windows, and there's something called triple E glass that's very good for thermal regulation and insulation, and it turns out not only does it shield against ultraviolet radiation, it actually shields against microwave radiation to a certain degree as well. And then there's something called dirty electricity that we really haven't talked about, and that's what comes in through your wiring, and there's ways of filtering that as well. Here we have a smart meter that's got just a wire mesh protecting this part of the smart meter, so the house would be on that side. This means that your smart meter can still function. Some people ask me, well, can I put aluminum foil all over my smart meter? Can I cover it in aluminum foil? And the answer is yes. Your smart meter won't work, and the utility will come and rip the aluminum foil off. So what you want to do is allow the radiation to get out, so to do the transmission, because you don't want the utility to come and remove anything you put on it, and simply shield the smart meter from the rest of your house. So you can minimize your own exposure simply by putting something on. And this is measuring dirty electricity, and there's a filter that you can use to reduce dirty electricity. Any kind of mosquito net screening, as long as it's metal. It can't be plastic. Pardon? If the smart meter is on your house, one of the things you can do is if it's on a wall, so let's say this is the wall, the smart meter's here, put something on this side of the wall on the inside. Just some screening, put a picture over top of it, that sort of thing, and that'll block it as well. What you can do is shield that side of your house from the neighbors. You can do it with the paint, with fabric, with film, so there's lots of things that will. Now there's, exactly, Sheena just mentioned that you really need to, you can't shield blindly, you really need to measure. And the reason for that is metal will act like an antenna or like a mirror to light. So if you put a mirror here and the radiation is coming from this direction, it'll reflect it. If the radiation is coming inside your house, it will reflect it as well, and so it'll double your exposure. So if you're going to put material on that will shield the radiation, reflect it, you want to make sure you're not reflecting it back to yourself. So you really want to make sure that you've got no sources of radiation on that side, and the best way to do that is with a meter. The meters now are really quite inexpensive. This is the one I recommend most people buy. And by the way, I don't make any money off any products I recommend. It's a no-no for me, so that you're not doing it to further my pocketbook at all, unfortunately. So this meter is actually made in the United Kingdom, and it's sold here by a company called EMF.com. So it's www.lessemf.com. There are lots of meters available. This one's really nice because it's pocket size, so you can carry it with you. If you push the button, it tells you what the readings are, and right now it's in the orange range, I think most of you can see. And part of that's because I'm dealing with a wireless mic here, so part of it is picking up my mic. And if you want to hear it, you can. So if you want to do it and you don't want anyone to know that you're doing readings, so if you go to pick up your kids at school and you want to figure out what's there, and you don't want to alert the principal that you're doing these readings, you can just walk around like this, right? and you can turn it off as well. So, pardon? Yes, it's called Acousticom, A-C-O-U-S-T-I, COM 2, Acousticom 2, and it's about $400, $350 or something. In Canada, it's about $3,000, but with the exchange rate. So that's a really nice meter that I recommend that people buy, because you can actually put it in your purse or pocket and carry it around. And if you buy one of these meters, you can actually determine what you're exposed to, and then you can begin to minimize it. And so as you walk closer to the source of exposure, the levels will get higher. So that's one of the ways of finding out what your source is. Oh, great. Now, can we just save the questions until the end? Because I think we will have time. How much time? 15 more minutes to talk? Got it. We have 45 minutes left to be together, so that's really kind of nice. If you're leaving your home, obviously you can't stay in your home. That unfortunately, people who have become really electrically sensitive have become refugees in their own home. But that's not something that I would recommend. And so once again, you can begin to protect yourself. And one of the things that's available are silver in fabrics. So you can buy underwear. And you can buy, you think I'm joking. You can buy lining for your clothing that has the silver mesh in it, and it will protect you. It's really quite effective at reflecting the radiation. And so ideally, the parts of your body you want to protect are from your shoulders, to your hips or slightly below your hips. And you want to protect your head. And so some people that I work with who are electrically sensitive, they wear baseball caps, and inside the baseball cap there's a silver lining, just like a cloud with a silver lining. And they put that on, and they say they don't get headaches when they go out into certain environments. Yes? Oh, you're stretching. Okay. So this is one of the things you can do, and I jokingly asked a friend if she'd make me a burqa that I could actually come up and be on stage with, but I realized I would need glasses if I did that. That would block the radiation from my eyes as well, and the burqa would be lined with this special material. So what do you need to do? Once you've become electrically hypersensitive, what can you do to protect yourself or to recover? And over the years, we have had people who were very, very seriously affected to the point where they couldn't live in their own homes. They would, buy a van and they'd park it in someone's wood lot, and that's where they would end up sleeping summer and winter. So in Canada, sleeping under those conditions as winter is a really difficult thing to do. So if you have developed electrohypersensitivity and you begin to take care of yourself, you can recover. We have evidence of that, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And the acronym I use for what you can do is RIDE. The R stands for reducing your exposure. That's absolutely mandatory. If you don't reduce your exposure, you're going to become sick. I interact with a lot of doctors, both medical MDs and naturopathic doctors and other healthcare providers. And one of the things they tell me is that their patients aren't recovering. Their patients would come to them with some illness, they'd give them some medication, some exercise, some food nutrients that they would need, and they go away and they become healthy again, and that's not happening. And I think the reason that's not happening is people are going into a home that is polluted. And so it's wearing down on their body, it's affecting their immune system, it's increasing all their stress proteins and stress neurotransmitters. So reducing exposure is absolutely critical. The other thing you have to do is you have to build up your immune system. And there's a lot of ways of doing that, and I'm not a medical doctor, so I usually don't give any advice on that, but many of you will be aware of how to do that. Another thing that's critical is to detoxify your body, and you almost have to do it in this order, because if you detoxify too quickly, you'll put the patient into crisis, and their symptoms will just get a lot worse. And the last thing you need to do is you have to deal with the emotional trauma. When I first got into this, people would contact me from all over, mostly North America, and mostly the United States, and they'd say, you know, these are my symptoms, you know, my family thinks I'm crazy, my doctor wants to put me in an insane asylum, I think I'm pretty normal and, you know, conscious and aware, I think I'm electrically hypersensitive. And sometimes all I could do with them is say, I believe if those are your symptoms that you could very well be electrically hypersensitive. And you'd feel this kind of sigh at the other end of the line say, thank you for believing me. So in some cases, because if people don't get support from their family and friends, and you know everyone thinks that they're crazy, they're going to begin to think they're crazy as well when they're not, and they're not going to get the treatment that they require. So providing that emotional stress relief is absolutely critical. Now, we've gone through eras, and asbestos was, you know, really bad for a long time. I teach a course called Pollution Ecology, where I talk about all the nasty pollutants in our environment, and I talk about asbestos and lead and cigarette smoking and DDT and all sorts of other things. And with asbestos, the insurance agencies warned against asbestos back in the early 1900s. They warned the companies. The doctors that worked for the insurance agencies the doctors that worked for the asbestos companies worked for the asbestos companies, and so they would very seldom tell the patients or their clients that they were going to die of mesothelioma or asbestosis. We now have insurance agencies that are not covering people who develop brain tumors from cell phones. So, you know, we're really getting there as well. And it's taken literally decades. The asbestos crisis hasn't yet hit. The peak of deaths from asbestosis and mesothelioma is going to hit within the next 10 to 15 years. When it came to cigarette smoking, the tobacco industry knew that this was harmful. If anything, they actually put things into the tobacco to make it much more, addictive, thank you, much more addictive, and much more toxic as well. So, you know, we now have smoke-free environments that I thought would never, ever, ever happen, and I'm thrilled. And we have asbestos-free environments as well. Now, one of the things we need are white zones, which are radiation-free zones for people who don't want to be exposed to this radiation. Now, at the beginning, I mentioned that there's also real issues with reproduction and cancer, and I just want to very briefly mention these. This one's quite timely. Last week, the National Toxicology Program released part of a study that cost them $25 million, where they exposed rats to cell phone radiation. And they found that there was an increased incidence of two types of cancers. One was a glioma, and one was a cancer or tumor that affected a certain type of heart cell that's very similar to something called an acoustic neuroma that affects the nerve cell to the head. And they released this early, ahead of time, because they were so concerned with the results that they got. Now, the study isn't perfect by any means, but it is raising flags for different government agencies to start taking this seriously, and at the very least to provide warnings and information to the public on how they can minimize, reduce their exposure. So that just came out last week. This is sperm, human sperm cells that we've tested. Obviously, the sperm cells worked in that particular example. But here we have control after 1 hour of being outside the body, and the ones down here are exposed to radio frequency radiation at the same frequency that we use for Wi-Fi. And you can see here that these sperm look fairly healthy, and they're swimming around. They're a little confused as to which direction to go, but that's because they're on a slide. And here we have them exposed for 1 hour to this microwave radiation. And these are exposure levels that are well below the federal communication guidelines. So we're not even 1% of those guidelines. At the top, this is 5 hours after being outside the body. And you can see in the bottom right, these are guys that have been exposed to microwave radiation for 5 hours, and they're not doing so well. And this is what we have to look forward to in people as well. So these were sperm exposed rather than people exposed. This audience is anticipating something, right? This is a phenomenal little music video that I just love. I've been sharing it with the world. I didn't make it, and what I'd like to do is just play a really short portion of it for you. It's called Nuking Your Johnson, and it's available on the internet, so you can all get it. Oh, someone just got it. Okay. And I strongly encourage those of you who have young sons to play it for them. I played it for my grandson and offered to play it to his friends, and he said, "No thanks, Nana, that's okay." And this is true. The mother's sitting right here. Okay, so here it is, a short little music video.
They used to say cell phones gave you cancer, but that was like 15 years ago. You've heard the rumors about brain tumors, but your cell phone company says it ain't so. Once in a while you get a lecture from your mom. Blah, 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 something said by Dr. Oz. It wasn't nothing about roasting your nuts, flamboyant your boys, cooking your junk. Oh, you didn't know. How could you know your cell phone's been nuking your Johnson? Every minute that it's on and in your pants pocket, it's blasting radiation at your love rocket.
Okay. So, and every time I listen to it, I can't help but sort of, so I'm up here giving a lecture and sort of moving to the music. Anyway, there are a number of websites now, many more than I have on this particular list. So I have a website called magdahavas.com where I provide information about this. Please, you're welcome to come to that site and get information. LessEMF.com is a company in New York that sells all sorts of products, from protectors to meters. The people there are really, really knowledgeable. They were in this a long time ago, and if you need any kind of information, they're a great resource. There's the Environmental Health Trust that's run by Deborah Davis, and that has a huge amount of information on cell phones and on protecting children particularly. They're really concerned about autism and infant problems with children. And the EMR policy, that's actually here in Vermont, in Marshfield, Vermont, and what they're trying to do is get political action to get rid of some of these types of exposure and to change the guidelines as well. So there's really a wealth of information available on the internet. And by the way, most of this information is provided by volunteers who either became sick, had a family member that became sick, and just really wanted to help change the world to be a better place and a safer place for all of us. And I'd like to end on this slide. Health is our greatest possession. And I think once we lose it, then we realize how important it really was and how other things fade in comparison. So thank you very much. And we'll take questions, and we'll start at the back there, and then we'll move around. Can you stand up and really project as well, please? How to sleep with your cell phone? That's good. Yeah, if you have your phone on airplane mode and you have the Wi-Fi off, because you can actually turn the Wi-Fi on even in airplane mode. So as long as the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and it's on airplane mode, then you shouldn't be exposed to any radiation at all. That's right, and you can use your cell phone for taking photographs and all sorts of things, listening to music without being exposed to the radiation. And that is a great way of putting it on at night. Now, one of the terrible things I've been told is that many kids, high school kids, take their phone and put it under their pillow so that in the middle of the night their friends can call them and they're aware, they're there for their friends. There's two issues with this. One is obviously the radiation. The other is the batteries in these phones can heat up quite a bit, and there have been fires where the pillow catches on fire. So you've got to be really, really careful with that as well. Yes? That's right. One of the ways that people use those is you have your cell phone. You take that cover and you put it on the side of the cell phone, and then you have your body here. So your body's here, the protective shield is here, and then your cell phone. So most of the radiation will go out. If you covered your entire cell phone with that material, it wouldn't work. If that reduces microwave radiation in all directions, your phone won't work. It has to be able to get out somehow. But there are cases now that are being manufactured that protect you against the radiation. We have someone here showing one right now.
It's called the Safe Sleeve, and they first made these for laptop computers, and then they started making them for the cell phones, and it blocks out 99% of the EMF. Safe Sleeve.
I would just tell everybody in the room, because I'm back here ready to come out of my skin. These devices that they're selling you, you have to have a tri-meter and a Gauss meter. You put a Gauss meter on that, you're going to find out that it doesn't work. Yeah. Guess what? The thing that's most dangerous is the magnetic fields that come out. So I'm going to tell you, I don't want anybody in this room to think that there's any device that you can put on a cell phone that makes it safe. I don't want you to think you can do what you just said. Because let me tell you something, the number one non-native EMF in the entire world is blue light. And it's the one that everybody forgets. And anytime you put that cell phone on at night, you are destroying something in your brain you're going to hear about, where it goes to the key area. You absolutely cannot use a cell phone at all after the sun sets. And when you understand why, you'll get it. You have to realize there's two fields. There's electric fields and there's magnetic fields. And it turns out at the lowest ranges, the magnetic fields are far more important than the electric fields. The ones we're talking about listening today are part of the electric pollution. Be aware that the magnetic fields are incredibly important. You have to have a Gauss meter to check that. A tri-meter does not check that. When you biohack those things, because you're going to hear a little bit about biohacking this afternoon, you will find out that you're being sold something that's a half-truth. I have a big saying I tell all my members.
Okay, one of the things that you can do, there is something that will shield magnetic fields, and it's called mu metal. It's actually quite effective, but it's not practical to use in the way that you're recommending here. The best thing you can do is, if you absolutely have to use the device, is move it away from your body. It's amazing how just a few inches will make a huge difference, because the radiation decreases exponentially. So the further away you can get it from your body. I have a cell phone. I almost always have it in airplane mode. I don't tell my friends to call me on my cell phone. If they do, I seldom answer it, because I don't want to train them that that's how they can reach me, right? So what I do is I always have it on airplane mode. The only time I use it is when I travel, or when I really need to reach out to someone in a timely fashion. And when I use it, I put it down on a desk as much as I can, and I talk to it on speaker mode. That's probably one of the best ways you can use it. Fortunately, kids today are actually using it to text, and that's a better way of using it than actually talking on it, because the radiation goes out when you actually send and when you receive information. So texting is better than talking. With talking, make sure you have it away from your body. For those of you who use an earpiece in your phone, those earpieces, a wired earpiece that goes to your cell phone, they're made of metal, and they act as an antenna as well. So initially we thought, wow, this is a great way for you to minimize your exposure. And then we measured it, and it radiates all along the metal. And so now what you have are, they're called blue tube or tube headsets, where the last few inches of the headset is just like a hollow tube, like a stethoscope would be. And so it only radiates up to that point, and then it's not getting right into your ear and head. Yes? Yep.
The other way you can do it, the best way, is what I tell all my members to do. You pay the electrician to come out, put a kill switch right by your bed, and you knock out the zones you want knocked out, and then it's completely away. The thing that everybody's forgetting, remember, the electric power grid is still active at night, okay? And in this country, it's 60 hertz. Guess where it is in Europe? Guess how it's different in Canada? It vibrates at different frequencies, and it turns out that your mitochondria oscillates at 100 hertz. Guess what? You know why more people have electromagnetic sensitivity in Europe than they do here in North America? Because they're at 50 hertz and we're at 60. We're a different harmonic. I just came back from London 2 weeks ago, and we talked about that to people over there, and they were shocked. Realized that even the cell towers around, there's different frequencies. They use GSM, we use CDMA. And Magda said something earlier that I want everybody to know. Rural generally is better. But guess what? In different environments, rural is actually worse. You know why? You change the power density on the bidirectional microwave device and the tower, and you don't know about it. So guess what? If you happen to live in rural Mississippi, you're getting more radiated than if you were probably in downtown Toronto, because of the power density changes. So guess what you have to do? Get out there and measure.
Yes? Yeah, they're using radio frequency at a different frequency, but they're still using radio frequency radiation to communicate. So, but once again, holding it further away from your body is a good way of using it if you have to use that kind of technology. Yes, and okay, no, it doesn't include listening to a radio. A radio is not a transmitter. A radio is a receiver. So it's got an antenna. It has amplifiers in there that actually bump up the power that's needed for you to actually hear things. So a portable radio is not the same as a cell phone or something that where you can send the information back out. There was someone here at the front. Did you still have a question?
I've been doing some reading into EMF, which is used for healing.
Right.
And I've done a lot of reading, and I'm a little confused. I find contradictory stuff. But here's the big question that I have right now: is that a lot of these writers seem to be indicating that we've actually affected and changed the Schumann resonance with all of this EMF stuff that we're like. Do you have any information on that?
The Schumann resonance is a function of the globe and the ionosphere and lightning strikes. So we're not doing too much, climate change might be changing, weather patterns globally enough to change the Schumann resonance. I don't think that's the issue. I think the fact that the Schumann resonance is being corrupted by other frequencies. So we still have the Schumann resonance there, but we have a lot of additional frequencies that our body has to deal with. The types of frequencies like Schumann resonance, those are natural. They're natural. They help us actually regulate our biorhythms. Right, and there have been studies where they've taken people, put them in bunkers, separated them from the natural electromagnetic fields of the Earth, and they become sick, some of them. They become really tired, lethargic, they don't think as clearly, and their circadian rhythm begins to go out of whack, it disintegrates. And the minute they start reintroducing that Schumann resonance, everything begins to regulate again. So the concern is not that it's getting rid of or changing the Schumann resonance. The concern is that it's producing all sorts of other frequencies. Now, the Earth's magnetic field, which is also something that we've been adapted to, we evolved with, that's getting weaker right now. And it's quite a bit weaker than its maximum has ever been. The weaker the Earth's magnetic field is, the less able the field is to shield us from some of the harmful rays coming from the sun. So the fact that it's getting weaker is not a good thing, but it's a natural process. We're not affecting that. But it means that our bodies now have to deal with that as well. When it comes to the pulse electromagnetic field therapy that you've been referring to, we've started doing some research with that. I started the research because I was concerned that perhaps people who were electrically sensitive couldn't use them because they were sensitive to the electricity. And I was also concerned about some of the claims these companies were making, that whether or not they were valid. We've started doing research, and it's amazing how these pulsed electromagnetic fields can help the body. I'm absolutely blown away, And from improving circulation, getting rid of blood coagulation, getting rid of inflammation, it's amazing. And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is, why do certain frequencies benefit the body and which ones? And then why do other frequencies harm the body and which ones? And I think the answer to that is that if you have very special waveforms at certain frequencies, at certain intensities, it helps it charges up your cells, for lack of a better explanation. You end up having more energy, everything's moving, it's all circulating, and you feel terrific. So it's helping your body heal itself. When you're exposed to chaotic waves, which is what the electrosmog is, it's chaotic, and it's on all the time, that's when your body says, I don't understand what's happening, I'm getting messages, I'm getting signals, I don't know how to react to them, and then your stress level goes up, and so your cortisol shoots up, your stress hormones, your stress proteins, all of that. So I think it's causing stress on the body in one case, and I think in the other case it's actually helping the body heal itself. Really quite promising technology. Yes? No, that's absolute BS. There's an infant in the room. I didn't want to use bad language. Why would they have to come and read it? Like, that's what they used to do in the past. That's what they're trying to get rid of, is having to read it so that the message is sent automatically. Okay, that's not correct. And the reason that's not correct is ultimately the way they want to use these meters is they want to charge you for peak time. And peak time is early in the morning when everyone's waking up in a residential area, and in the evening when everyone comes home and starts turning on the fridge, the stove, the lights, that kind of thing. Under those circumstances, they're going to charge you more during peak hours so that some people won't use them. So they can't come once a day to find out when your use was. They have to actually measure it on a regular basis so that they can then charge you for those different time periods. So that information is simply not accurate. Yes, in the blue or green? We've tested a few stones. We haven't done it systematically, so I can't answer that question. Shungite does seem to help some people, which is really quite interesting. And there's one other one, but I can't remember the kind of crystal it was. No, it wasn't orgone. That also makes a difference, and some people get really sick with it, so you have to be very careful how you end up using it. There are stickers you can put on your phone, there's stickers you can put on your computer, there's necklaces you can wear, there's all sorts of things. And when we first started testing these products, we tested the radiation to see how it changed the radiation from the device that was emitting the radiation. And we found there was nothing that we could test that changed. And when we talked to the manufacturers or the people who invented the device, they said, no, it's not going to change the radiation. It's going to help your body protect itself somehow. And it's using subtle energy, which I don't know how to measure, apart from dowsing or something like that. And so then we realized what we have to do is we have to test the body and to see how the body is reacting. And with some of these devices, we're actually getting a physiological response from the person, so that when they have the device on their cell phone or on their body, they do better. And it's not psychosomatic because it's a blinded experiment that we've been doing. We haven't done enough to know how different people react. And my guess is that it's going to be very individualistic. So I might benefit from it, you might not, from putting this device on. And so the advice I normally give to people is if you really want to test a product that you think might help you, make sure that you get a money-back guarantee from the seller. Test it for a month and see if you notice anything different. Now, that's not going to guarantee it's helping you, but if some people really notice a benefit, they're not getting the headaches they used to get in the past with the same kind of exposure, then, you want to keep it, then keep it. Otherwise, just send it back to the people who manufactured it. With what? No, I haven't. Yes?
Magda, I see you have a dirty electricity filter on the power strip up there. Do you have a recommended home protocol? And specifically, have you looked at or tested just power outlets in the bedroom? Or are you actively using dirty electricity filters for this?
Yeah, when I first started getting into this and I was working with people who were electrically sensitive, I was looking at their response to dirty electricity because these filters existed, and I was convinced they didn't work. And so when a mother asked me to check a school for her where she got permission to put them in and find out how many people would benefit, I thought, well, even if they don't benefit, it's a useful study. And they did. So I'm a real proponent of these filters. I have them in my home. I sometimes travel with them, but unfortunately I leave them behind. I forget to unplug them, and so there are hotel rooms with filters in them that no one knows what they do. There is, so we have, So this is a meter that measures them. It's about $120, $125, something like that. And this is measuring 1,400. They're different units called GS units. This is really, really high. Levels above 2,000 have been associated with cancers in schools with teacher exposure. And if you plug in a filter, it actually changes it right away. So we're measuring something that really changes. And if you plugged it in 2 meters in this particular environment, it would go down to 200. We just did it a few minutes ago, so we know. So I strongly encourage these. There is information available. Sheena said it's on my website, or no? Thank you. Okay, so apparently on my website, I'm beginning to suffer from, I think, premature Alzheimer's disease. I can't remember names of people and lots of other things, but anyway, on my website there's information. Sheena also has a website. It's called getpurepower.ca. Sheena does home inspections, and the only reason I'm saying that is because she can't do any for you because she's in Ontario. But she does home inspections, and she really helps people figure out what they need to do that won't cost them anything. So she's not there to sell filters, but what you can do. And if you go to her website, she has information there too on how to install the filters. And if you have any questions, you can contact her or Dave Stetzer, and they'll provide you with a lot of information. Sheena, do you want to come up here and say anything? Okay, your office and your bedroom are the two key environments, and you can, as soon as you put one of these filters in, it cleans up the entire circuit. So whatever you're going to get, if two bedrooms are on the same circuit, you clean up one bedroom, the other bedroom's automatically cleaned up. So it's... Pardon? Would you repeat your contact or website? getpurepower.ca. getpurepower.ca. And mine is magdahavas.com. It has email address. And if you contact me and I can't answer your question, I'll just send it to Sheena. Oh, yeah, I have. Thank you. She should just come up here and talk. She promised she'd keep it to less than 5% of my talk. I take her to these conferences. We go there, and at the end of it, people line up to ask questions, and they all line up to Sheena, And if I'm driving, I say, Sheena, I'm leaving in a few minutes. You're either coming or you're not. So she's a great resource. We'll be here till Sunday morning, and so you can chat to either one of us. But I do have a YouTube channel, and I have a lot of educational videos on it. Some of them are really quite short. I have some on dirty electricity as well, and multiple sclerosis and diabetes, and all sorts of things that relate to electrosmog. And are there any more questions? Yes? Using Wi-Fi, sorry? Well, if you're using a Wi-Fi, it's constantly communicating with the router that you have nearby. So your cell phone is communicating when you're talking, when you're receiving, if you're downloading video or something. So whenever it's in an active mode, uploading, downloading, if you have it just turned off, it's every few minutes it will send a ping to the nearest cell tower, and get back. Now Sheena's also coaching me. This is ridiculous. Okay, lift your hand, Sheena. Sheena has something on her hand called a jawbone. And people have Fitbits. How many people here have Fitbits or something else that encourages them to walk? Okay, those are emitting a microwave signal every second. So you might not want to be exposed to that. We went online, found a jawbone. The first generation doesn't emit microwave radiation at all. You have to plug it in order to find out how you slept or how many steps you took or whatever else you're actually monitoring, using it for. So they're still available. They're incredibly inexpensive because the company's trying to get rid of them because no one wants them. They all want wireless stuff, and so they're still available. So if you care about your health and want to monitor the jawbone, Up by Jawbone is a really good one. Would that be the same for Garmin, the old version that you plug in versus the Bluetooth? Yeah, the Bluetooth is the one that you don't want to have. Yeah. Yes, at the back?
You had one slide that you went through really quickly, and it showed like a silver cuff, and I didn't catch what that was all about. Was that like a silver piece of jewelry or something?
Okay, any kind of metal will shield you against this radiation. So silver as a fiber, so if you have clothing that has silver embedded in it, it will actually protect you against the radiation. Now, yeah, that was a joke. If you have jewelry on your body, it will, once again, if it's metal, it will reflect the radiation. It can actually make it worse. So if you have any metal in or on your body, it will heat up around that. So kids who have metal braces and go to school, that Wi-Fi radiation will just bounce around in their head. Women who have underwire bras, where it's a wire under the cup, that'll bounce around the breast. If you have metal implants, they'll get hot if you're in an environment where you're exposed to either ground current or microwave radiation. Zippers, for example, will do the same thing. And there are some people who can't wear metal jewelry because they're so sensitive, because it's actually increasing the exposure right where the jewelry is. So thank you for raising that. Any kind of metal is going to do the same thing. Gold, silver, aluminum, iron, copper, all of that's going to do it. If you have multiple metals in your mouth, like if you have gold and silver, then you're setting up a battery in your mouth, and you should really get rid of that. Sorry about that. Yep. Well, they're going to be exposed every time they're transmitting. I've not monitored one of them, so I don't know how regular the transmissions are, whether it's constant or whether it's intermittent. Anything with a modem that's wireless will transmit. Yep.
I was wondering about EMF exposures from some of the new energy-efficient technologies. People are putting solar panels on their homes.
Okay, could we just have a few more minutes just answering questions? If anyone wants to leave, you're really welcome to leave, but just so that people can hear the questions and the answers. The question was about solar power. I'm a real fan of renewable energy and conservation. I think that's absolutely critical. Unfortunately, solar powers, when they're used and converted to alternating current in your home, they produce a huge amount of dirty electricity. It goes off scale. And so what we really need are really good inverters that don't do that, but I haven't found any so far. If you use solar energy and you keep it as a direct current, so you've charged batteries, and then you use the battery for some of your lighting, you can get direct current lighting or direct current appliances. That's the best way to use it. Then you don't produce any of this dirty electricity. Or if you're using it to heat water, so for that kind of heating, then that's fine too. So those are the ideal ways of using solar. With wind turbines, we passed a huge number of wind turbines on the way here. It really kind of blew us away. Same thing, once they're converted from direct current to alternating current, they produce a huge amount of dirty electricity that gets into homes. People who live near these turbines are getting sick. Some of it is from the noise. Some of it's from the infrasound, so the vibrations that make you kind of feel nauseous, a really low frequency that you can't hear, and some of it is from the ground current and dirty electricity. So, and people who tend to have motion sickness are the ones who are going to be sensitive to this kind of energy as well. Yes? Well, actually, showering is a good way of doing it. Grounding your body is a really good way. Going out, this sounds absolutely silly. Hug a tree and go out barefoot in the grass. If you're traveling and you're going to a marine environment, get into the salt water and just ground yourself. If you're not, take magnesium bath. It really helps enormously for people who have developed Epsom salt, electrical sensitivity. So there are a lot of things that you can do to neutralize yourself. Yeah. Yes?
I found not using oil and also do use fermented products that have low amounts of salt seems to balance the electrical systems in the body so the electric flows instead of getting stuck.
That's good information. Thank you. Pardon?
Can you repeat what you said?
Go ahead.
Not use oils. Literally do not use oils to eat. Don't put them in your mouth, except for the coconut oil and maybe red palm oil. Do not use oil. They're rancid before they are released in the factory. And do use fermented foods which have low amounts of salt because electric current must have
Okay, we've been asked to let people leave if they want to. We can stay in here and answer some questions for a little while, but I think lunch is being served soon, so you might want to not miss lunch. We'll be here taking our equipment apart for a while, so if anyone wants to come up and ask Sheena or I questions, you're most welcome to do so. Thank you very much. Thank you.